Welcome to Pondering Passages. Today, Curt and I are going to take a look at Psalm chapter 9. It really is a beautiful psalm, and we can't wait to share it with you.
Welcome to Pondering Passages. I'm Curt Austin, my good friend right over there.
David Mullins.
He's back. I can't believe
I am back.
So, Dave, you've been traveling the world, experiencing all that God has done across the world. What's your favorite thing that happened in the last month? Oh, he's got a Scotland shirt.
Yeah,
Very nice.
Went to Scotland for almost 3 weeks,
Right.
and made it there, and actually made it back. We were a little concerned because coming back, they said you had to have a negative COVID test, not just vaccine cards. That's what we needed to leave. But to get back in the US, we had to get a negative test. And it's kind of like, well, there's so many folks that are asymptomatic. So we're wearing like
symptomatic.
What?
Asymptomatic.
Isn't that? Oh, I thought that's what I said.
Not systematic.
Oh, okay.
There are a lot of people who are asymptomatic.
Yeah.
You're exactly right, but not in that context.
But so we're wearing masks around, even though Scotland had lessened the need for masks, because it's kind of like, we don't know what people have. So it was a surprise. We did not know it going over that we had to have a negative test coming back, but it was negative. We made it back. We're here. And I'm so glad to be back with you, even though I know you've been trying to replace me. You're taking, I know this is just like interviews that you're doing with folks.
We've got applications. They're lining up. I'm telling you that so many applications. But it's great to have you back. We're looking at Psalm 9 today. And probably one of my least favorite of the first 9 is Psalm 9.
Well, can I tell you something about Psalm 9?
Please do.
Did you put all of the interludes in? Did you leave those in?
I don't know. Let's see.
Yeah.
I usually do, because I think interlude. Well, no, I didn't.
Do. You didn't?
I don't think I did. Nope, I didn't. I must have taken them out.
Okay. Well, if you look at it,
there's a quiet one.
There's the quiet interlude.
And there's the other one. There are only 2, right?
Right. But what do you notice about the second one?
It's at the end of the story.
Yes.
What does that mean?
It means that there's a good chance that Psalm 10 was actually part of Psalm 9.
Yes, I read that as well.
Okay.
But we're only talking about Psalm 9.
I know. It was a real struggle for me, because it's kind of like, well, gosh, if they really feel, because it was also supposed to be an acrostic where they start out with, but then
the alphabet,
it got messed up somewhere. And so I don't know how I feel about all that, because it's like, oh, it's an acrostic, but it's not like a pure acrostic. Well, then is it?
And it's not.
But anyway, for those that really care, you can just go on and read Psalm 10 as well. And I don't think it will mess with us today, but I think when we do next week's show, that might need to be in the back of our minds.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And sung to the tune "Death of the Sun." I'm not familiar with that one. I think it's in a 3/4 time, and I
thought it was in 7/8. 7/8.
There's my dog.
There is your dog
to come back up.
All right, he just leaves it open.
No, he never shuts the door behind him. He always leaves it open. It's really annoying.
Yeah.
No, he wants to. All right, so let's talk about this psalm.
Let's do it.
So you've been reading it. I've been reading it. I love verses 1 and 2. I think it's beautiful. Praise you, Lord, with all my heart. I mean, it's just beautiful. Tell them the marvelous things you've done. Filled with joy because of you, I'll sing praises to your name, O Most High. Anything to that?
It's good. It's all good. Although Although I really have to take a step back, and it's one thing to echo the praise with the psalmist. I think it's another thing to completely enter into this lifestyle.
Very nice. Very nice.
So, you know, it's like, yeah, yada, yada, yada. But that's, what does it mean to truly praise the Lord with all our hearts? And what does it mean for us to tell of all the marvelous things that he's done? And you can go through this and say, what does that mean in my life to really live this out rather than just kind of reading through it?
Yeah, I like that, Dave. That's a great insight, and I think it goes back to what we've been trying to do as we read all of these. When we started with 69, is what is the formative question
Yeah.
that this psalm raises? Not just information, knowing that this could be part of Psalm 10, knowing that there's not just that informational level, but what's the formational level that takes us to this passage and says, okay, I how do I do this? If I was reading this in first person as opposed to I'm reading what someone else wrote, and I said, I will praise you, Lord, with all my heart. Oh, what's that look like?
Yeah.
How do I engage that? Um, yeah, that's a wonderful challenge.
And you know what? I'm just thinking if we spend another, 15 minutes on just these two verses, then we don't have to enter into the rest of the psalm.
Well, that's what I did with Psalm 6. So I'm all right with that. I mean, I really am all right with that because I think that's one of the trappings that we fall into in doing this show. We'll call it a show for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
Is that we do feel like you got to kind of walk through all of it and give some. Well, what if this is the insight for you and I this week? This is the thing.
Yeah, and I do think it's important to walk through the whole thing.
See, that's why we get trapped in that.
Well, yeah. Because one of the things about faith is dealing with stuff that we'd rather not deal with. And bringing God into the picture. And not everything in Scripture is going to resonate with us today. But maybe next week something happens, and all of a sudden this psalm starts, coming back to our memory.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, now I know what the psalmist is talking about. I know exactly. Maybe not exactly how he feels because their enemies were probably out to actually kill them. But
yeah. Well, then let's march forward. Then we've got a limited amount of time. We got to get this done. So verses 3, 4, 5, and 6, talking a lot about the enemies.
Yep. The fact that they retreated,
staggered, and died when you appeared. This is an upper. This is a good one. For you have judged in my favor. So the reason that this is happening is because they're God is on his side, right? In this, and judged is a lot, but in this, but also the nations become kind of the emblem of the enemy.
Right.
It's a personal story. I mean, I can't imagine what it is if I'm reading this in my own. My enemies retreat. You have judged in my favor. And all of those enemies, Canada, Mexico, Brazil, all of them are against me, right?
Yeah. Although I would say the psalmist's worldview is the fact that they were God's special possession.
Mm-hmm.
And they were on the side of God, which means that they were on the side of justice.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think they saw, in terms of their nation, a nation that was all about justice. I mean, they had the law and they had all this stuff. And so, the second part of verse 4, he says, you have judged with fairness, which kind of speaks to justice.
Yeah.
And then verse 5, you have erased their names forever. That's a huge deal in that culture. Yeah. All you had was your legacy. All you had was your name. People would build statues for that memory, and he's saying you've erased their names forever.
Well, in verse 6, you've uprooted them, are now forgotten.
They're forgotten.
The cities you uprooted are now forgotten. So he really swings this to the worst possible situation. Yeah. But the Lord reigns forever. executing judgment from his throne. He will judge the world. I mean, the word judge in this is a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot, isn't it? Yeah.
It's in there a lot.
Yeah. Which is, if you're suffering from injustice, what do you want? You want a judge to rule in your favor.
Yeah.
With fairness as well.
Verse 9, the Lord is a shelter for the oppressed, a refuge in times of trouble. I love that.
And that's one of the things, if we hadn't continued through here, we would have missed that.
That's all right. Next, when we go through this in 3 years and we're back on Psalm 9, then we could talk about that verse.
We're going to continue this for 3 years? We're going to roll back around?
Cycle back around, man. Those who know your name trust in you, O Lord. For you, O Lord, do not abandon those who search for you. That's verse 10. I'm all right. You've called me out. You've corrected me, and I appreciate it. But rather than just standing with verses 1 and 2, because now I just want to stay with verse 10.
Yes, that's a good one.
I mean, you do not abandon those who search for you. Those who know your name trust in you.
Yeah.
So talk about knowing your name. What's that? What does that mean? That's not just Yahweh. That's not it's not just it's actually knowing the identity of, right? The character of God.
Yeah. This might be a little much for our show, but the reason why I was in Scotland is because I'm on sabbatical, and one of the things I was hoping to do on sabbatical is read more of a guy named Evagrius Ponticus. He was an early church father in the desert, and he has a process of salvation, I guess process, and his goal is knowledge of God. That is the goal, is knowledge of God. It's not prayer. It's not good works. It's not good deeds. It's knowledge of God. All these things, everything in life that he talks about, he's the one that kind of started the 7 deadly sins, that whole concept. Everything that he writes about is to bring the monk to a knowledge of the Holy Trinity. That is the ultimate. And prayer serves for that purpose. And so if you throw that verse back up again, he would probably, and I haven't looked it up, I probably should, because this is probably one that he really jumped on. Those who know your name, those who know you. And then, for you do not abandon those who search for you. And that is that whole journey that we're on, is of searching for God. It's not, it's not and some people disagree with me, but it's not about heaven. It's not about going to heaven after you die. It's about truly knowing God and being in relationship with God.
Oh,
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So this has been in my head. All right. Just
get out of my head and into my car, man.
This is, even better. Great transition to what I've been thinking. So Dave and I are going to take a couple of weeks and we're going to travel out west.
Road trip.
We're going to spend a lot of time together, right?
Yes.
And if you just called up anybody, a neighbor or somebody, and you said, hey, can we just spend the next 2 weeks together driving? And we're going to start up in the northern state, and we're going to drive all the way down to the southern state, and we're going to travel this road together. How much more enjoyable if you actually know the partner that you're riding with. Right. And I was thinking about this as it relates to our relationship with God, and how much more we would enjoy the journey if we actually knew God better. Yeah. And I was thinking about this as it relates to heaven. Why do we want to go to heaven? We don't like spending time with God now. Why? We don't do it now. We don't do it in prayer. We don't do it in reading the passage. We're put out when we have to actually go to church. We all of these things are just almost inconveniences to our daily life.
There's a country song. What is it? If there's no beer in heaven, I don't want to go.
Right.
So, I mean, that is, it's kind of like, well, wait, what?
Yes.
I know it's supposed to be kind of funny, but it's really kind of sad, and it kind of shows really where our mindset is anyway.
Yes. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
so rather than realizing that eternity is spent in the presence of God, and that's what then gives us joy, not just that it's just there's a house with many mansions, or streets paved with
Right.
gold, or all dogs go to heaven, or whatever it is that you motivates you. It's in fact the time that you will then spend in the presence of the Creator, the holiest of holies. And if you don't like
Our
doing it now, you're not going to love the rest of eternity.
Yeah, I mean, really, it's just kind of like the kids movie Finding Nemo. Nemo, you're searching and searching and searching, but then the goal is when the search is over. That's the joy of heaven. That search is over because
Oh,
there
that's a
you
good point.
are.
I like
Yeah,
that. And
yeah,
because at the end of the movie, they actually love spending time together. They
yeah,
love, where as
yeah.
opposed
But
to it
the
was this
whole
adversarial almost.
yeah,
Good for
yeah,
you. All right. Hey, look, we're stumbling on all kinds of new
we
and exciting
are.
things. Sing
Yeah,
praises to the Lord. This is verse 11. Who reigns in Jerusalem? Tell the world about his unforgettable deeds. For he, in verse 12, who avenges murder, cares for the helpless. He does not ignore the cries of those who suffer.
I
That's encouraging.
it is, and it goes back to this whole thing on justice. Yes, you want God to judge because He judges with justice and with fairness. And if you are on His side, aligned with Him, doing what you're wanting Him to do, of course you're wanting Him to judge. And it ends with these praises because He judges rightly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Avenges murder for the helpless, those who suffer.
I like
And
this.
then
I'm gonna keep moving.
yeah, and then He moves back to Himself. Have
And that
mercy
was,
on
I think,
me.
originally I was saying I didn't love this psalm. I think it's because it was almost not schizophrenic in that back and forth and back and forth, but it seemed like little snippets that were kind of put together, and
Oh,
not the story necessarily.
well, I think, when you're dealing with acrostic, you are limited
Yeah.
because I forget, I think it was every other verse started with a different letter of the Hebrew alphabet. So you would get to verse 13. It's like, well, now I'm up to whatever letter it is. Well, what am I going to do here? Well,
Right.
Lord,
Right.
well, where do I go from there? Well, have mercy on me,
Yeah.
because I have enemies. I'm at the jaws of death. Save me. Why?
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
Save me, not so that I can have a nicer house or a better job, or my family's all happy, healthy, whole, but that I can praise you.
Yeah. I can tell
That's
people what you've done, that
yeah,
you've
which
rescued me.
goes back to verses 1 and 2, right? I can
Right.
tell
Yeah.
all the marvelous things. Well, that's the same thing here.
Yeah.
So I can rejoice. Nice.
Yeah.
Nations have fallen, verse 15. The nations have fallen into the pit they dug for others. This must have been a really recurring thing, a statement
Well,
in that age.
it still is. I mean, how many movies bring satisfaction when you see the antagonist end up setting Wile E. Coyote? He sets all these traps for the Roadrunner, and he ends up getting. I mean, it's just like, yes,
The
yes,
entire premise of that cartoon is him setting traps that he falls into himself. You're right.
yes.
You're right. So this was written for the Wile E. Coyote cartoon
It
series.
was. I
Um,
think there's something deep within us that it's like when someone's doing wrong,
oh my
and
word.
again, it's like justice doesn't always have to be instituted to someone. Sometimes justice happens because you're on the wrong side of things.
Yeah.
And no one likes to see the wicked get away with it. They always like to see something, although today it seems like sometimes people are rooting for the unjust, but it's like, what do we say? Well, it serves them right.
Hmm.
They dug that pit and then they tripped and fell into it themselves.
Well,
That
you
just
made the bed, now you have to lie in it. I mean, that's kind
exactly.
of the same. A little
Although,
more
why would
cushy
you
than
make
a
the bed if you're just going to lie in it?
little more cushy
Anyway,
than the pit, you know.
yeah.
17, the wicked will go down to the grave. This is the fate of all nations who ignore God and people,
Now,
I would assume.
this is really where it picks up in
In-
Psalm 10. If you look at
yeah.
Psalm
So
10,
let's not
it talks
spoil it.
about those who ignore God. So
Let's
that's
not
a little
spoil it.
foretaste for where, well, if you see it as one psalm, we're not spoiling it. It's like, oh,
Okay. All right.
this theme will continue in. And I think that's one of the reasons why they think at one point it was one psalm. It's one psalm in the Septuagint and somewhere else. I forget where. But anyway.
Yeah. But the needy will not be ignored forever. The hopes of the poor will not always be crushed. This is a theme about who God loves, how God takes care of his own.
But what is verse 18 saying about right now?
They're ignored right now, but they won't be forever. Well, maybe that's not what he meant, but and again, you go back to Israel, and if this was written when the Israelites were kind of scattered among the nations, then it goes back to even in Egypt when they were praying for 400 years for deliverance. There's this God answer my prayer, and so I think that's. And again, I think that is true to our own story, right? I mean, things don't get fixed overnight.
Right.
Very rarely do the answers come right. We say the prayer and the doorbell rings. Very seldom.
Yeah.
Instead, I just saw a thing today about empathy. I don't know if you saw this as well, but empathy is not coming alongside someone and telling them it's okay. It will be okay. Empathy is actually coming alongside someone and saying, I know things really are not okay. I mean, I understand that things are not okay. That's just the way it is right now. And we just want things to get better as quickly as possible.
And sometimes I try to encourage people by saying, the story's not over yet. This is the story right now. This is your story right now, but your story's not over.
Yeah.
You don't know what the next chapter will bring. So, yeah.
Brilliant. All right. We're on the last slide here. Verses 19 and 20. Arise, O Lord, do not let mere mortals defy you. Judge the nations. I like the mere mortals. It takes me into like the Marvel universe or something like that. I don't know why.
And really, this is looking back at verse 19. The people won't be forgotten forever. So arise, O Lord, now.
Yeah.
Make them tremble in fear. Show your power.
So
it also you're merely human.
Okay, Dave, take it down a notch. All right. No, the reality is this ends in a weird way. I think that's the other thing. As I was reading, is like verses 19 and 20 are kind of a weird, especially with the beginning. Let me tell of all of your marvelous deeds, and the last is make them tremble in fear, Lord. Let the nation. It's kind of this gritty, dark. People are gonna suffer, kind of a thing.
Make them suffer,
and then there's this
truly are.
Which I love that idea that between now and next week there's an interlude.
Yeah, long one.
The other one was a quiet one. This is a long one. This is a long interlude.
Yeah,
but it gives you that space to think about all of the things that they've said in Psalm 19, right? And then as you enter into Psalm 20 or Psalm 9 and Psalm 10, then they kind of merge together. Excellent. This is good. Thank you for making this not my least favorite in the first 9. Thank you.
Seriously, that's reserved for Psalm 6 now, right?
No, I liked Psalm 6. I like Psalm 6.
Okay.
But it just, I was by myself. I didn't want to talk about the whole thing. I just wanted to find a little one. But so we are next week, we're going to start reading Psalm 10. Starting tomorrow, and we're going to so come to ponderingpassages.com, visit us there, and that's where you'll find all of the videos. You'll find our podcasts as we keep filling that in. You'll find the blog that we're adding. Dave, now that you've got all this free time, you can be writing blogs and dropping them into.
I guess I could.
Yeah, you could.
I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, just a short one, just 200-300 words, something that just make us weep a little when we read it.
Well, I don't know that I can do that, but
you can also find us on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. You can be a part of those conversations there. Click us, like us, follow us, give us a comment. For those of you who are watching this after we've had some guest shots to be a part of this, let us know what you thought of those. If you want us to keep those people off this show forever, that's fine. We get that because, Dave's back. Now it all makes sense. All of life works again.
Know. Yeah, I don't know about that.
Well, Dave, have a great week, and I will talk to everybody. We will talk to everybody next week.
All right. Okay. We go to Inverness, and the first thing they say is they said, "Did you hear about the bicycle event?" You mean it's a different one. This one is a road. There's like 20, like 30 or 40 miles around Loch Ness, and then they come back. He said there is Inverness is a small town. They had 6,000 bikers plus everyone else, and I figured the Lamborghinis were there because they had some like high-end biker, long distance type of folks. And I figured that's why the Lamborghinis were there. And I don't know if like these guys were together or if they kind of said, "Hey, you got a Lamborghini? I have a Lamborghini. Hey, let's ride around together." And then later we heard them clear on the other side of town because it's if you've ever heard one of these, it sounds like a really cheap, to me, it sounds like a really cheap go-kart.
Yeah, really high, ranked up, jacked up pretty high.
Just kind of like, hey, we only have one gear and that's first. So we'll do 220 miles in first gear. But man, we're in a neighborhood. They blew by us. They had been doing 70 or 80 down just this neighborhood road. It was actually not a very wise thing, but.
Well, no.
Yeah.
That goes without saying.
But if you're driving a $250,000. I told Laura, I said, we just saw $750,000 pass us.
Yep.
Yeah. Every time I see one, I tend to take a picture. I saw one in Chicago. In fact, we almost parked next to it in a parking garage. But
Maserati.
Yeah.
I'm seeing them all over the place.
Yeah, Maserati. Those are more family cars.
Yeah. I thought I saw a bunch of little stick figures on the window of the back.
Yeah,
the last one that went
baby
past.
on board.
Yeah.